On January the 1st, 2026, a government office in Beijing signed a single piece of paper, and within weeks, vaults on the other side of the planet started running empty. Nobody rang a bell. There was no press conference, no dramatic headline splashed across the evening news. Just a quiet licensing rule, buried in a trade bulletin, that almost no one outside a small circle of metal traders bothered to read. But that piece of paper is the reason silver has behaved like nothing you've ever seen it do before, and it's the reason the coins in your parents' safe, the panels on your neighbor's roof, and the phone in your pocket are all connected to a decision made 10,000 miles away. Here's why this matters to you, whether you've ever bought an ounce of silver in your life or not. Silver isn't just a shiny metal collector's trade at coin shows. It's inside your car, your solar panels, your phone, your laptop, the wiring in your walls, and the AI data centers being built right now to run the technology reshaping the economy. When the world's biggest buyer of that metal suddenly flips from selling it to hoarding it, the ripple doesn't stay in China. It reaches retirees checking their retirement accounts in Ohio, factory owners in Texas trying to source parts, and young families in Pakistan and the Philippines watching the price of jewelry climb every month. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what China did, why almost nobody caught it in real time, and why some analysts believe this single policy shift may be the most consequential precious metal story of the decade. And if you're interested in money, investing, gold, silver, and protecting your financial future, go ahead and subscribe to Money Insights and like this video, because every week we break down the biggest financial stories in simple English. So you're never the last person to understand what's happening to your money. Let's start with the number that made veteran commodity traders sit up straight. For most of 2025, China was a net exporter of silver. It shipped out roughly 5,100 tons of the metal to refiners, manufacturers, and investors around the world. That's a country acting the way China had acted for years, as a supplier, not a hoarder. Then, in a single quarter, everything reversed. China didn't just slow its exports. It became one of the most aggressive net importers of silver the market has ever recorded, pulling in more than 1,600 tons in the first 3 months of 2026 alone. That's the largest quarterly silver inflow into China on record. Not close, not a slight uptick, the single largest. But here's where everything changes. That number alone doesn't explain why prices behaved the way they did. If China was buying more silver than ever before, you'd expect a straight line up. Instead, silver rocketed from around $71 an ounce at the start of the year to an all-time high above $121 by late January. And then, weeks later, it fell hard, shedding roughly a third of its value before stabilizing. That contradiction is the first thread investigators had to pull on. Record Chinese buying, wild price swings, two things that don't obviously fit together. Unless you understand what was actually happening underneath the surface. To understand it, you have to understand something most people never think about. Silver doesn't trade in one single unified market. There are two worlds. There's the Western world, dominated by COMEX in New York and the LBMA in London, where silver is priced mostly through futures contracts and paper trading, promises to deliver metal, not always the metal itself. And there's the Eastern world, centered on the Shanghai Gold Exchange and Shanghai Futures Exchange, where silver is priced much closer to physical, hand-to-hand delivery. Historically, these two markets moved together, roughly in sync, connected by traders who could buy in one and sell in the other whenever prices drifted apart. That connection is what kept the global silver price honest. Now here's the part most people miss. In March of 2026, silver on the Shanghai Exchange was trading around $95 an ounce, while silver in London sat closer to $84, a gap of roughly $12, around 14%. In a market that's supposed to be globally connected, a gap that size should snap shut within days as traders rush to buy cheap in the West and sell expensive in the East. Instead, the gap held, which meant something was jamming the normal flow of metal between the two halves of the world. That something was the piece of paper signed on New Year's Day. Starting January 1st, 2026, China's Ministry of Commerce required any company wanting to export refined silver out of the country to obtain a special government license, not a formality, a real gatekeeping system. Only 44 companies nationwide were approved to hold these licenses, and to qualify, a firm needed to already be refining at least 80 tons of silver a year and carry credit lines above $30 million. Smaller refiners, trading houses, and opportunistic exporters were locked out entirely. The rules are set to remain in place through at least 2027. Almost nobody noticed this at first because on paper it looked like a routine trade regulation, the kind governments issue constantly. China is one of the world's most important hubs for silver refining, manufacturing, and exports, which means this wasn't a minor bureaucratic tweak. It was China taking greater control over an important part of the global silver supply chain, following a broader pattern Beijing has used with other strategic materials. History tells a very different story about why this matters more than most viewers expect. Go back to 2010 and 2011, when China began tightening exports of rare earth elements, the materials used in everything from smartphones to wind turbines. Prices for some of those elements spiked more than tenfold within months, catching manufacturers around the world completely flat-footed. It took years for Western supply chains to adjust. If silver is now following a similar script, the disruption won't be a one-week news story. It could be a multi-year restructuring of how the entire world sources one of its most industrially critical metals. So why would China do this now, in 2026 specifically? This is where the investigation gets interesting, because there isn't one single reason. There are at least three forces converging at exactly the same moment, and almost none of them are about investment speculation. The first is solar power. Modern high-efficiency solar cells, the kind called N-type and TOPCon and 8JT cells that have become the industry standard, require 30 to 50% more silver per panel than the older technology they're replacing. China isn't just the world's largest silver buyer. It's also the world's largest solar panel manufacturer by an enormous margin, and the country is on pace to install a record amount of solar capacity this year alone. Global solar demand for silver is now estimated above 125 million ounces annually. That's not a niche industrial use anymore. That's a structural recurring appetite for physical metal that doesn't care what the price is doing on any given day. The second force is the expansion of AI infrastructure and the electrical grid. As countries build more data centers and upgrade their power networks, demand is rising for electrical equipment, high conductivity components, and the infrastructure needed to move enormous amounts of electricity. Silver plays an important role in many of these applications because of its exceptional electrical conductivity. China's massive manufacturing base puts it directly in the middle of this growing demand. The third force is simpler and more human. Retail investors inside China, priced out of an increasingly expensive gold market, turned to silver as the more affordable way to protect their savings. Small bars and coins became a household purchase in a way they hadn't been in years, adding a wave of ordinary demand on top of the industrial surge. Almost nobody noticed how these three forces were compounding at once because each one, on its own, looked manageable. Solar demand alone, manageable. AI infrastructure alone, manageable. Retail buying alone, manageable. But stacked together, hitting a market that had already posted a silver supply deficit for 6 consecutive years, they created something the physical market simply could not absorb quietly. This is where the story becomes personal for people who've never thought about commodity markets in their lives. Think about a retired schoolteacher in the American Midwest with a modest portfolio that includes some silver coins she bought decades ago as a hedge against inflation. She doesn't watch COMEX inventory reports. She has no idea what a licensing regime in Beijing means. But when the price of silver swings 30% in a matter of weeks, her sense of financial security swings right along with it. For better or worse, depending on which side of that swing she's standing on when she needs the money. Or think about a young couple in their late 20s, saving for a home down payment, who bought a handful of silver rounds because a friend told them it was a smart way to diversify outside of stocks. They watch the price spike to $121 and feel like geniuses. Then they watch it fall back toward $70 and start to panic, not realizing that even after the pullback, silver is still up nearly 80% compared to a year earlier. Emotional whiplash, caused by a supply chain story most investors never even heard about. Or think about a factory worker in a small American electronics manufacturing plant, watching input costs rise because the silver paste and wiring his company depends on has become harder and more expensive to source. His paycheck doesn't move because of geopolitics headlines. It moves because of decisions like the one Beijing made on New Year's Day, quietly working their way down a very long supply chain until they land on his factory floor. Now here's where the physical squeeze becomes visible in the numbers that matter most to Western markets. COMEX, the exchange in New York where much of the world's silver futures trading happens, tracks something called registered inventory. The actual physical silver sitting in approved vaults, available to be delivered if someone holding a futures contract demands the real metal instead of settling in cash. In September of 2025, that registered inventory stood at roughly 201 million ounces. By April of 2026, it had fallen to just over 79 million ounces, a drop of roughly 61% in 7 months. Think about what that actually means. The total amount of silver obligated through COMEX futures contracts dwarfs the amount of physical metal sitting in the vaults ready to be delivered. Some analysts estimate the coverage ratio, physical metal available compared to open contracts, has fallen to somewhere around 13%. That doesn't guarantee a crisis. Most contract holders never actually demand physical delivery. They settle in cash and roll their positions forward the way the market has functioned for decades. but it substantially shrinks the buffer the exchange has if a wave of buyers ever did demand real metal all at once. And when China's export licensing regime chokes off one of the primary sources that used to refill those Western vaults, that buffer has far less room to rebuild. This tiny detail changes everything about how we should think about the paper price of silver versus the physical price of silver. For decades, most investors assumed the number on their screen, the spot price, accurately reflected supply and demand for the actual metal. But when Shanghai trades at a meaningful premium to London, and when COMEX vaults are draining while Chinese vaults are filling, that assumption starts to crack. Traders and bullion banks noticed the gap too, and had every incentive to buy silver in London or New York and ship it east to capture the Shanghai premium, which only accelerated the drain on Western inventories even further. It's a feedback loop. Tight Western supply invites arbitrage. Arbitrage moves more metal east, and Western supply gets even tighter. Even China's own domestic exchange felt pressure from this dynamic. The Shanghai Futures Exchange came under real delivery strain earlier in the year after some of its own inventory had been drawn down to help support the London market during a physical demand spike tied to festival buying in India in late 2025. In response, Shanghai raised its silver margin requirements and moved aggressively to rebuild its own stockpiles, which only reinforced China's motivation to lock down exports even further just months later. One tight market pulling metal from another tight market, until nearly every major exchange in the world found itself short of the one thing everyone needed at the same time. Almost nobody noticed that this entire chain of events traces back to a structural weakness that has nothing to do with China at all. Roughly 75% of the world's silver isn't mined for silver's own sake. It comes as a byproduct of copper and zinc mining. When silver prices spike, mining companies can't simply ramp up silver-specific production, the way an oil company might open a new well. They're bound to the economics of copper and zinc, which means when demand surges the way it has in 2026, the supply side of the equation is almost powerless to respond quickly. Inelastic supply meeting a demand shock is precisely the kind of imbalance that creates dramatic, sustained price moves. And it's a large part of why this deficit has now persisted for 6 years running, with cumulative shortfall since 2021 approaching or exceeding the equivalent of a full year's worth of global mine output. There's one more layer to this story that rarely makes it into the mainstream coverage, and it might be the most important piece of all. Silver isn't only an industrial metal and a retail investment, it's increasingly being watched as a strategic material by governments, manufacturers, and investors. As countries expand power generation, transmission networks, advanced electronics, and other high-tech infrastructure, silver remains important because of its exceptional conductivity and unique industrial properties. None of these individual threads would make headlines on their own. Stacked together with everything else, they add another layer of buyers, competing for a shrinking physical pool. Unexpected pattern interrupt worth sitting with for a second. Watch how closely gold and silver have started moving together this year. For most of the past decade, gold behaved like the cautious, established store of value, while silver played catch-up, usually lagging behind and overreacting in both directions. In 2026, something shifted. Silver has, at multiple points, led gold rather than followed it, with traders and analysts openly saying they're watching silver first for clues about where the broader precious metals complex is headed next. Veteran commodity reporters with decades of experience covering these markets have called that a genuinely rare occurrence. When the historically secondary metal starts leading the historically primary one, it's usually a signal that something structural, not just sentimental, has changed underneath the market. That shift shows up clearly in the gold-silver ratio, a simple number that tells you how many ounces of silver it takes to buy 1 ounce of gold. For most of modern history, that ratio has hovered somewhere between 50 and 80. When the ratio is historically high, it often means silver is cheap relative to gold. When it compresses sharply, as it has at points throughout 2026, it often means silver is catching up fast, closing a valuation gap that had built up over years. Whether that compression continues, stalls, or reverses is exactly the kind of question no honest analyst can answer with certainty. But it's a number worth watching because it's one of the clearest fingerprints of exactly the supply story we've been tracing this entire video. So where does that leave the price today? Here's the reality check, because a responsible look at this story has to include the parts that don't fit a simple, dramatic narrative. Silver did not stay above $121. As of late August 2026, silver is trading in the high $60 range, still up dramatically from where it started the year, but well off its January peak. A COMEX technical outage in late February, right as prices were surging, added to volatility and fueled genuine skepticism about how reliable Western paper pricing mechanisms really are. Some traders openly questioned whether the system could be trusted during moments of real stress. Markets have also been reacting to broader forces layered on top of the China story. A weaker US dollar following an expanded Treasury bond buyback program, hawkish signals from Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh, and simmering geopolitical tensions that have pushed investors towards safe haven assets generally, not just silver specifically. It's important to be honest about what we don't know. Nobody can guarantee silver keeps climbing, and nobody can guarantee China's export licensing regime stays exactly as strict as it is today. History shows these kinds of controls are sometimes eased once strategic goals are met or trade negotiations shift the incentives. Markets have also been reacting to broader forces layered on top of the China story, a weaker US dollar, changing expectations around Federal Reserve policy, and simmering geopolitical tensions that have pushed investors towards safe haven assets generally, not just silver specifically. Some analysts believe the current tightness could ease if global mine supply gradually adjusts or if industrial demand growth slows. Others believe the structural deficit is now so deeply embedded that even a policy reversal in Beijing wouldn't quickly refill Western vaults. The honest answer is that both scenarios remain genuinely possible, and anyone promising you certainty about where silver goes next is telling you more than the data can support. It's important to be honest about what we don't know. Nobody can guarantee silver keeps climbing, and nobody can guarantee China's export licensing regime stays exactly as strict as it is today. History shows these kinds of controls are sometimes eased once strategic goals are met or trade negotiations shift the incentives. Some analysts believe the current tightness could ease if global mine supply gradually adjusts or if industrial demand growth slows. Others believe the structural deficit is now so deeply embedded, 6 straight years and counting, that even a policy reversal in Beijing wouldn't quickly refill Western vaults. The honest answer is that both scenarios remain genuinely possible, and anyone promising you certainty about where silver goes next is telling you more than the data can support. But here's the bigger pattern underneath all the daily price noise, and it's the reason this story deserves more attention than it's gotten. For decades, the global silver market operated like a single, connected pool. Metal flowed relatively freely between east and west based on price signals, keeping the whole system roughly balanced. What China did on January 1st, 2026, wasn't just a trade rule. It was the beginning of a shift toward a world where critical materials increasingly move along national lines instead of purely economic ones, echoing the same protectionist instincts already applied to rare earths and other strategic resources. A pooled global system becoming a fragmented regional one is exactly the kind of structural change that creates the sharp, localized price swings we've watched unfold all year. Not because speculators are manipulating a chart, but because the physical plumbing connecting markets has been partially shut off at the source. That's the part almost nobody was saying clearly back in January, when this all began. The headlines focused on the price spike, but the deeper story was never really about one dramatic number on a chart. It was about a fundamental restructuring of how one of the world's most industrially essential metals moves across borders, quietly reshaping incentives for everyone. From a Shanghai solar manufacturer to a retiree in Ohio, to a factory worker whose paycheck depends on a supply chain he's never had a reason to think about. So here's the answer to the question. This whole story has been building toward. China isn't just buying more silver. China is quietly rewriting who controls access to it, and in doing so, is testing whether the rest of the world can adapt to a future where critical materials aren't always guaranteed to flow freely across borders anymore. That's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to understand what's actually happening to the metal sitting in your investment account, your electronics, and the industries building the next chapter of the global economy. Because the families, workers, and investors who understand this shift early are the ones best positioned to make calm, informed decisions instead of emotional ones when the next headline hits. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insights and like this video. More powerful financial insights are coming next.